right. There we go. I think we are all set. It's really dark in here today. Well, I guess we'll just get going here. All right. Okay. Hello, everyone. I am so excited to be able to share the room with you today. I've been thinking a lot about the kind of grief that many spiritually aware women carry. And it's a grief that often goes unnamed, maybe even unseen, or really unspoken, even to ourselves. Mostly because I think we think we're going to be shamed for it, whether we're going to shame ourselves or whether we'll get shamed by somebody else. So the grief that I'm talking about is the grief of life not unfolding the way that we hoped that it would. And one way to think about that is thinking about it as the grief of delayed desires, things that we really, really want, but just don't seem to show up. And what I've noticed is that this grief, this disappointment, it actually changes our relationship with hope. It changes our relationship with receiving and really even with life itself. When there are these desires, and I'll speak more about them in a moment, but when we have these desires that continuously aren't met, I think it really impacts how we view our relationship with the divine or God, goddess, nature, universe, whatever your name is for that which is bigger than you. Right? It changes how we view our relationship with that divinity and also with our personal divinity. That in and of itself can create a crisis, right? But ultimately, this grief and all the subsequent issues that come out of the grief puts a huge roadblock to getting what we want. So no, not only have we not gotten what we want, when we end up in this cycle of grief and disappointment, there's another roadblock that comes in that keeps us truly from getting what we want. So let's dive in, shall we? Should we talk about it a little bit? Okay. So the place I want to start is these delayed desires create real emotional grief. And it's important to talk about because in the spiritual community, we're taught, I think we accidentally end up being taught to bypass grief and pain. If you, right, where those sort of the surface level teachings say, yeah, you just put that to the side and you just really think harder about what you want. You imagine more, you feel more, you put yourself in the experience of it. And the spiritual women that I've worked with have already done all of that. Right? And so you're in this space of, okay, I was told to do X, Y, and Z in order to be able to manifest something. I'm still not getting it. But if I pay attention to what I don't have, isn't that going to put me farther away from what I want? Right? But there's real emotional grief when there's something that you have been trying to create and trying to create and trying to create that just hasn't come through. And today is really talking about why it's important to even think about it or talk about it. Okay. So what's a delayed desire? What are we even talking about here? Is it disappointment that they didn't have your favorite sandwich at the sandwich shop, or you weren't able to get the right soup? No. Okay. Delayed desires are really, let's start talking about them first by talking about them as all of the shoulds that you carry. I should have created my business to this level by now. should have reached a particular career goal, right? I should have climbed the ladder in a different way. I should have reached the pinnacle of where I'm supposed to be by now. Or it could be something like, I really thought that I would have a committed, stable relationship by now. Or it could be something along the lines of, I should have this much money in my retirement account and it's not there yet, which means that I haven't created the resources that I want to create. Or maybe it's not having the kind of relationship you want with your grown kids or your extended family. Or maybe it's saying, oh gosh, should I have created that family? Or I tried so hard and I just couldn't. Or I haven't been able to yet. Right? The grief that I'm talking about today comes from those desires that you know down to the marrow of your bones that you both want it and know it's supposed to be part of your experience. Okay. It's mourning the life that you thought you'd have by now. It's relationship grief. It's financial exhaustion. It's emotional loneliness. It's, I thought life would feel different. I thought I'd be happier. I thought I'd be freer. I thought I'd be calmer. I thought I'd be more loving, whatever it is. Right? And something important to note also is that most people who are carrying this grief are also functioning beautifully on the outside, right? Unless somebody's close to you, they wouldn't have any idea that you're carrying this kind of grief. When I went through bankruptcy back in 2009, if you weren't in the know, you wouldn't have known. I was running a successful business. I was interacting with clients. I was interacting with people in my community. And yet this very personal failure that I was going through ate me alive. But on the outside, nobody would have ever known. Okay. So here you are, you're experiencing this very intense grief, disappointment, and yet you are high functioning on the outside. Right? I think that many women are secretly ashamed of how much they're hurting, especially if they've done years of healing or spiritual work. We get to this place where we say, well, I should be in a better place. I should be better at this. I know I can quote verse and chapter of every spiritual book. I can list the 10 different healing modalities that I have participated in. And I still don't have what I want. I'm still feeling all of this grief. Shame comes up around that. You know? I'm curious. This is a pretty intense topic, but I'm curious what you're noticing as you're listening. What is your body doing? Are you noticing any gripping in your belly? Are you noticing any ahas? I'd love to know. Right? Okay. In terms of the shoulds, I am consistently surprised by how all of these shoulds continue to sneak up, both for myself and clients. The shoulds are really sneaky, aren't they? They masquerade as motivators, or they masquerade as invitations or inspiration. They masquerade as keeping us moving towards that what we want. And yet, there's a couple of places in my own life where I still catch myself at times in that should space. Now I can recognize them now, whereas I couldn't before. And before, the a should would come up and it would grab me, and I would spiral down. I don't have to do that anymore. I'm able to recognize it. And at the same time, we can get really trapped by those shoulds, can't we? No. And truly, it's not surprising that we end up getting trapped by those shoulds, or we end up spiraling from those shoulds. Because when you're dealing with significant disappointment, when you're dealing with grief, it changes our brains and how we interact with life. When you're experiencing that really deep grief, that deep disappointment, you can end up in patterns of emotional bracing. In other words, waiting for the other shoe to drop. Right. So let's say that you have this area of that you really want, and you're starting to get some evidence, right? Things are starting to change. But as soon as you notice that things are starting to change, you end up freezing. Because, well, really? Is that really going to happen again? If I feel good, isn't the other shoe going to drop? Right? We can also end up in patterns of overfunctioning, meaning I haven't gotten what I want. I must need to do X and Y and Z and AA and AB and AC, right? Like going down the spreadsheet. Yeah. And I'm just going to keep doing. I'm going to keep doing. I'm going to keep doing. Partly because there's that little niggling thought in the back of your brain of, well, maybe I just wasn't doing enough. And then there's also that space of, if I stop doing, I'm going to actually have to feel. So I'm just going to keep the wheels moving forward so that I don't have to look at this grief. You can end up in some hyper independence, actually, when you're in that pattern too, right? Particularly if relationships are your issue. It's just easier to depend on myself. Everybody else is going to disappoint me. Right? When there's that grief and disappointment, you can also end up in a place of being fearful of hope, because hope is dangerous. There's this, it's not actually truth, but we think it's true, that if we don't get what we want, it's going to hurt more if we're in a space or place of hope than a place of neutrality, or even like this negative space of, I don't know if it's ever really going to happen for me. Right. But when I was working with women who had struggled over and over and over again as they work to create their own families, right? They're dealing with infertility. The thing is, whether you hoped or not, if that cycle didn't work out, that IVF didn't work out, if that donor egg cycle didn't work out, it still hurt. It's a myth. And yet we still think, okay, if I'm feeling hopeful, then I'm going to get, that other shoe's going to drop, and I'm just going to get submarined. It's a big pattern, and it's an issue, which we'll talk more about in a moment. But really, truly, when you're holding this grief, you're emotionally exhausted. It's hard to relax, and your nervous system is in fight, flight, freeze all the time. When we're in this space of knowing there's something that really is supposed to be in our life that hasn't happened, when we have had constant disappointment and have all of these patterns that I just spoke about, I call this abundance heartbreak. It's that emotional space that you arrive in when you've had repeated disappointment, when those delayed desires are front and center. And end stage abundance heartbreak is when you start feeling unsupported by life. And when I say abundance heartbreak, I mean it in the broadest sense. It can be money, it can be financially based abundance, or it's love, or time, or purpose, or relationship. It's any of the ways that you can think about having abundance in your life. In the manifestation world, or let me say that differently. When we look at abundance heartbreak more from a manifestation lens, like through that manifestation lens, I think we tend to get pulled into thinking, oh, I just need to work on my abundance mindset, right? I must not truly believe in abundance. I must really need to plug in and really feel that ability for me to be abundant. And yeah, that might be a little bit of it, maybe. But truly, when you get in the space of abundance heartbreak, it's not that you stopped believing in abundance, but it's more that your nervous system stopped feeling safe. And maybe even beyond, not maybe, beyond your nervous system stopped feeling safe. It just is no longer safe to put yourself in any position where you can be disappointed again. But the thing is that with abundance heartbreak, this thing that we want, this desire that we have, is still beating, right? It's still in the back of your mind. It's still in your heart saying, I want this. But you get in this cycle of, right, that heartbeat, that beating of that desire, and it doesn't feel safe to open up. And so it ultimately ends up at a place where you feel like you're frozen, you're stopped in that particular area, right? The rest of life is going on, you're looking normal to everybody around you, but in this place we stop trusting life itself. We stop trusting the universe, God, nature, right? We can even get in this place where we start feeling like there's something wrong with us, that we're broken, that we're wrong. How can we possibly be divinity how can I possibly be divinity if I can't create what I want? Right? And when you're in this space of abundance heartbreak, you can also have manifestation fatigue. Right? I want you to think back to when you first learned about manifestation. I know that when I first learned about manifestation, it was like, woohoo, right? Oh my goodness, here's this thing that I can finally put language to that will help me control getting what I want. I'm going to finally get what I want. Now I know the laws. Right? Woohoo, it's here, it's fantastic. And then what you want doesn't come. Right? So you move from this space of feeling in control, you move into the space of feeling like you finally understand what the rules are, and now you're spiritually exhausted. You are completely guarded around hope. You get in this place where you perhaps even emotionally withdraw from your desire. It's still there, right? It's still beating. And yet there's a ton of space between that desire and and you, because you just can't. Okay. I really think that many women stop trusting life long before they realize it. Okay. Here's what I want you to know, though. Having delayed desires, being in this space of abundance heartbreak, does not mean that life abandoned you. It might feel like it. It might feel like truth, but that's not actually true. However, when you are in that space of abundance heartbreak, you can end up with these emotional patterns that make receiving feel unsafe. When you don't feel safe, when you don't feel safe to receive, you put a giant stop sign out to the universe. So, whatever was the driver that was separating you from what you wanted now has an extra layer of blockage around it. It has all of these emotional protection patterns. If you think about your desire as a Lego piece or as a Lego structure, there's when we are creating with the universe, when we're in that space of receiving, we have, metaphorically speaking, a Lego sized hole for that desire to come into. But when you stop trusting the universe, when you stop trusting the divine, when you stop trusting life, that hole has a cover over it. Okay. You have to feel safe to open enough to receive. Right? Most people don't struggle because they feel unworthy, but they're struggling because we've been taught through all of this disappointment that being open is dangerous. Okay. So what do you do? Because this is a really challenging space to be in. If you don't trust life, how are you going to open back up? And it's so beyond that space of, oh, just think positive, right? When you are in a place of abundance heartbreak, the last thing you want to be told is, oh, honey, just think positive, right? One of the most important mindset shifts to make when you're in that space of abundance heartbreak is that you want to remember that when there's something that we want so powerfully and we don't have it yet, it is your soul trying hard to get your attention. It's not about a lesson. It's not about having to suffer. No, none of that. It's usually an intense experience to get your attention, to help you begin to see old patterns that were so hidden that you weren't aware of them. Things that were separating you from your conscious experience of your own divinity. And that's a big concept, right? I mean, intellectually, I know you understand it. And to bring that on board when you're in this place of grief can be a challenge. But that's the place I want to start. That's ultimately where you want to go. But it often starts being able to reverse this distrust of life and the universe comes in steps like being able to start to soothe your nervous system when good things start happening. You want to be able to reverse that bracing that tends to happen, right? As we think about the other shoe dropping, or, well, I'm just going to get disappointed again. It's about truly allowing support. Whether that support is coming from the divine, whether that support is coming from other people. But right, we talked about how when you're in that pattern of disappointment that you can end up in overfunctioning, right? We've got to slow that overfunctioning down so that you can soften into this place of opening. It's about learning how to grieve what isn't present without completely collapsing. It's about staying open before the outcome shows up. Okay? Healing abundance heartbreak is not about forcing yourself to feel hopeful all the time. Not going to happen. And it isn't even necessary. Sometimes healing is simply becoming less defended against life. It's about bringing those barriers down. It's about recognizing what you're believing about yourself because you haven't gotten this thing that is so important to you. It's about opening back up to possibility before the outcome comes. Okay. And as you take those steps, now you begin to develop a brand new relationship with life, with a brand new relationship with the divine. And as you do that, life begins to shift, resources begin to come in, and you begin to see this big desire that you've had start step by step to come into your life. If you've been carrying this kind of heartbreak or guardedness with life, I just want you to know there's nothing wrong with you. It makes complete sense to get to where you've gotten. Okay? This kind of abundance heartbreak creates emotional patterns that we were not taught to understand and we were not taught how to move through. Even, I'm not even sure that the spiritual world necessarily offers one solid answer for it. Yes, there are pieces, but there's not one solid answer. This is work I care deeply about. I care deeply about helping women navigate this space. So if this resonated with you, you're welcome to reach out. I will leave my link for a conversation in the comments. And I'm also super curious about what came forward for you. Right? So until we get to have a chance to have a conversation again, I wish each and every one of you prosperous blessings, and we'll talk again soon. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.